Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another featured guest here on Jenisys Solutions Diabetes, the sugar-sweet enemy, where we showcase guests who have transformed their lives following a devastating diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. From time to time, we'll also discuss alternative ways and methods that they have used to assist them in their journey. My hope is that you'll be inspired to start your journeys and transform your own lives and your health, to feel better, to look better, and to be better versions of yourself. Thank you for joining us for today's story of transformation. Hello, everyone. This is Jenisys Walters, and this is Jenisys Speaks Diabetes, the Sugar-Sweet Enemy podcast. And I want to get right into our guest today, James Harper, who is a consultant in the food industry for over 12 years. And he graduated from the University of West Indies with a BSc in Nutrition and Dietetics, as well as associate degree in Culinary Management. He's a certified diabetes educator from Michener Institute of Education at UHN and the International Diabetes Federation, IDF. And that was in 2020. Also, that same year, James decided to move forward and start his business. And at the same time, that was when COVID was actually fully underway. But in spite of that, James made the decision to launch his business anyway. The decision to go ahead was bigger than that because James decided to be a type 2 diabetes reversal coach because he had personally seen the benefits of reversing insulin resistance. And James went on to study the root causes of type 2 diabetes as well as obesity, but not just that with his clients, but with his own personal weight loss journey as well. So in light of what was happening with the global pandemic over the next couple of years, James' mission was to help the people in the Caribbean and in particular, the islands of Trinidad and Tobago to facilitate eradicating type 2 diabetes and obesity. And he purposed to do that exactly one program at a time. So I want to go ahead and welcome our guest today, special guest, James Harper. How are you today, James?
Hi, good day, good day. How are you? So thank you very much for having me on the podcast here. It's a pleasure. Yeah, it is a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here today. And I know that what you're bringing to us today is going to be very instrumental in people that are trying to deal with their diabetes situation and their illness, and they want to be able to manage it well. And I know that you are an expert in dietetics and nutrition, and also you're a reversal diabetes coach. And we can't wait to get into the conversation today to see what you have to tell us about how to manage that better. All right, then. So what I wanted to start off with, though, James, was how did you get the passion? Where did the passion come from for you to get started in the diabetes arena and in the health and wellness space? Where did that come from?
Well, to tell you the truth, my journey has actually not been a straightforward journey. In my teenage years, I never said, well, I wanted to be a nutritionist. I wanted to be a dietitian. I wanted to help people with type 2 diabetes. That was never in the plan.
Okay.
Usually, so in the beginning, I actually wanted to be a chef, right? Right. So after school, I did my associate's degree in culinary management. I actually went for my internship and I worked in the industry for a few years.
Okay.
But working in the industry, I realized that I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I love to cook, right? But I just wasn't feeling fulfilled. And another thing too was that the industry was not kind to me, meaning that the time, the hours,
Yes,
and
hard
those
work.
things, and the hard work, right? What was so daunting to me, and the reason why I left the industry was because a day I was going home and my dog, Vinny, right, he grand charged me. Reason being because I was hardly home, because, long nights, double shifts, things like that, being on your feet. And I just was not feeling fulfilled. But what also started happening, I realized like my health started to decline. So like I started gaining more weight. when I was younger, like in my not teenage years, but earlier than that, in my childhood years, I was actually asthmatic. And
Okay.
so I started showing signs and symptoms of asthma, and also my eczema started reappearing. So all these other factors, I was like, you know what, this thing is really stressing me out. Let me start doing something. Around that time, my father was diagnosed with colon cancer.
Oh, wow.
Right. So, a lot was happening. So I decided, and I had two choices: to go on further my studies in culinary management, or to start a new journey on nutrition and dietetics. And for some reason, I had that inclination to go into nutrition and dietetics. So I went into it. Right? I actually started part-time, but that was a bit difficult for me. So I went full-fledged, full-time into nutrition and dietetics. Never looked back.
So let me ask you this question. So you said that when you were growing up, your father had cancer and you had some issues, medical issues. Do you have anyone in your family that had immune, issues like diabetes or lupus or anything like that? Did you have any family members that had anything like that?
No.
But then you notice that with your situation that you started to gain weight, and the stress of the job was having you gain some weight, and you knew that you had to do something about it. And then you decided to go to school and go into diet. But then when did your passion for diabetes come in? How did that happen?
Right. So the journey, so at 2009, I graduated with my bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics. And I worked different jobs. So I worked with the Ministry of Health. I worked with Northwest Regional Health Authority, which is a subsidiary of the health sector of Trinidad and Tobago. So they deal with the Northwest region of the country with health issues, so things like type 2 diabetes. And I realized, like, working in the Ministry of Health and also working in the Northwest Regional Health Authority, I realized that one problem kept coming up: type 2 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And I also realized that it was a common problem that could be solved, because sorry about that. I also worked as a diet technician in the Northwest Regional Health Authority. And I realized that working under those dietitians, which was a huge blessing, I realized that just because they made shifts or they actually implemented changes in the patient's life, you saw marked improvements, right? Some of them actually came off medication. Some of them said they did not take any medication again, but just because they did small incremental changes in their diet, they saw improvements in their type 2 diabetes or in their A1C levels.
Wow.
So then after working for NWRHA, because I used to do it on a part-time basis, I said, okay, let me go into diabetes education. So during the time I was working with the Ministry of Health, I did my diabetes education course. Then after that, after the Ministry of Health, after that contract expired, I decided to go into the private sector. So I applied to a pharmaceutical company, right? And because they were dealing with people who were type 2 diabetic, and their specialty was giving out, or nothing, but distributing what we call blood glucose monitors or glucometers, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, so I started doing that, and working in that company. What that showed me was that I was actually good at lowering people's A1C levels. And I said, you know what, James, you have a gift for helping people, not only helping people, but also lowering their A1C levels.
Yeah.
Now, that relationship with the company was a bit conflicting, because they were more studying about glucose monitor sales, which is not bad. At the end of the day, the role of a company is for you to make money. Let's all be honest, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that when it came to actually helping people, that was my main goal. And I believe that the company's goals and my goals were a bit conflicting.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the thing about it is that the regional manager who was based in Panama, they believed in getting more numbers, right? More numbers. But what was so, when the local manager went to a diabetes clinic in Trinidad and Tobago, and she said, because they would tell me like, James, you take too long with the patients, and James, why are you doing that? You know, why are you taking so long with the patients? And I said, well, it's not like a diagnosis where you could just give them something, give them a tablet and just send them their way. Like, doctor,
Exactly.
Doctor, I have a back pain. Okay, I'll give you this medication and send them their way, right? It's a lifestyle change. You have to try to implement into them. So it's a bit more complex. Of course, there's a bit of conflicting personalities and conflicting beliefs. So when the local manager went into a diabetes clinic in Trinidad and Tobago, and the diabetic nurse said, sometimes with our first-time patients, we take up to 2 hours to deal with the patient just to ensure that they understand what they have to do. That's when they know that was the aha moment for them. And that's when I knew that either I was going to get fired or retrenched, as they say, or I was going to leave. But either way, I wasn't going to stay there for the long term. I knew that.
Yeah.
So in late 2019, early 2020, they released me because at the end of the day, because of the amount of expenditure that is spent in the project and they're not getting the amount of sales, right? They were getting results with the patients, but they weren't getting the sales that was, like the glucose monitor sales, that I was retrenched. I told myself, you know what, James, you're way too talented to be bogged down by people and their limiting beliefs. You know how much of a difference you could make. So that's why I decided to go full-fledged into my business. And that's when Inspiro was actually rebirthed, right? Because I opened it before, but I stopped because of the job. So Inspiro Wellness was the name of my company, was rebirthed.
Gotcha. So I'm really impressed with that story, because here's the thing. What I know is that sometimes when you're on the wrong bus, you need to vacate that seat so that you can let somebody who needs to be on the bus to be in that seat. And then you need to go get the right seat on the right bus that's for you. And so that's a very impressive story, in where you realized where your talent was. You realized where you could make the most impact, as opposed to where you were, and you had to get off that bus. And so we are grateful for that. The community is grateful for that, because you needed to be where you would make the most impact and make the most difference. And so that's what happened for you. And so being able to realize that, we benefited from that. And it was their loss that they lost a good person, but it's our benefit that we now get your expertise and your skill set to help this community heal and reverse diabetes. That is just an amazing story, So you started your business at a very challenging time in history for the world.
Yeah.
We're talking about it happened during COVID, and COVID was really in 2020 just taken off. So tell us about some of the challenges that you kind of came up with. I mean, you had opened your business before, but then because of the job and because of the long hours and everything that you were dealing with, you kind of put that on the back burner for a little bit. But then when you decided to start again, you started at a time that was a very, very challenging time. So tell us about some of the challenges that you came up, that you met with when you did it the second time.
Okay, so the challenges, first of all, was getting clients. Right, that was the main challenge. Being noticed as an expert, right? Yeah. So for me, from 2020 to at this point, it has actually been a journey, right? Because it has been a long process. 2 years is not long, but when you're learning and you're going through the motions, it has been a long process. But what it has taught me to be is to learn to position myself to be an expert. As one of my friends once said, it's not about screaming your message to everyone. It's about whispering to the right ears, to the right people. And that was the wrong, and that was the wrong thing. I wasn't whispering to the right ears. I was trying to scream my message. I was a bit all over the place. So what I decided to do is take my energy and focus my energy on the right things. So on optimizing my social media profiles, putting out messages that are not only informational, but also helpful, right? Also position myself to be an expert, because sometimes it's not about putting yourself out there, it's about attracting the right people towards you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those are the things that I really worked hard at. It was a trial and error, and I did not get here on my own. Got a lot of help from people, got a lot of support, because honestly, to reach to where you want to be, you need help and support. I got help and support from my fiance, from my family, from my mother, my brothers, who are my biggest fans, from my cousins who helped me. My cousin Nicole, she's a communication expert, so she helped me a lot. My other cousin Jason, he always was behind me. My brothers Justin, Drew, my mom Helen, my fiance Shay, they were there every step of the way. So it was a hard journey, yes, and I haven't reached the pinnacle, but I believe that because of the steps that I took to reach to this point, I think the only way I can go is up from here. So
you're on your way.
Yes. So the challenges is more or less is positioning yourself in a way that your message is not loud enough to be heard, but is good enough that people cannot deny you.
Wow, that's powerful. So what I'm also impressed with is that when they say there's a behind every good woman or behind every good man, there's an army. In your case, right? You had an army of people that were supporting you. And I think in order to be successful in today's economy and in today's world, and with all the things that are going on in the world today, that when you have the support that you need and you're whispering to the people that you need to whisper to, and the message is clear and it's concise and it's directed to who you need it to be directed to, then it will happen, because those people need you. They hear, it's almost like, if you read the Bible, it says that the shepherd, when he calls his sheep, they hear his voice and they follow that voice because they know their shepherd's voice. Yeah. And so it's like that when you're giving messages to the world, or you're trying to send some information out to the world. If the right people are not listening, then it's not going to be heard. So the people that need to hear it will hear it. And then the people that don't need to hear it, it will bypass them. So I think that's a very powerful point that you made about the support that you have, but also your messaging and how you had to target your message and how you had to make it more concise and clear to the people that you wanted to reach and help the most. And of course, that's why you're now on your way to where you are. So let me ask you about your general philosophy of diabetes. Do you feel that, do you incorporate with your treatment of your clients today? Do you incorporate traditional medicine? Do you steer more towards holistic medicine? Do you have a combination of both? What's your general philosophy about how we should treat diabetes? Maybe you can tell us your philosophy of how you treat your clients today.
My philosophy that I use is mindful nutrition accompanied with habit change. Hey. Because what I will tell you is that, and a lot of people might disagree, and that's fine, but I believe that type 2 diabetes is a dietary disorder that's caused by socioeconomic factors.
Tell us what you mean by that. Tell us what you mean by that.
Okay, right. So what I'm saying is this, right? The number one reason why people do not know about type 2 diabetes or do not know how to overcome it is because of misinformation. Misinformation is the number one thing that is causing people with type 2 diabetes not to resolve it, right? And I will tell you why. Countless studies are showing right now that type 2 diabetes can be reversed with your diet. Countless of studies are saying that, right? Countless studies are saying that even if you want to improve your A1C levels, right? You have to do something. You have to make changes in your diet. You have to improve your diet one way or the other, right? Whether it's reduce carbs, whatever, but your lifestyle has to change, okay? Now, the thing about it is this: the root cause of type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance. Now, insulin resistance, unless you have pancreatitis, right? Or pancreatic cancer, or something called an insulinoma, or COVID, because COVID can
similar symptoms.
Yes, right. Can show similar symptoms because COVID actually damages some of your organs.
Yeah.
But the root cause of insulin resistance is a poor diet. And the root cause of type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance, which is caused by visceral fat, which is caused by, again, a poor diet, right?
Gotcha.
Now things like genetics, family history, all these things are what you call causal factors, right? They're all causal factors. So they're not, so that meaning that they contribute to it, but they're not the cause. Because type 2 diabetes, the thing about it is that up to the early 21st century, type 1 diabetes was the major type of diabetes, right?
Yeah.
That affected children. Fast forward to 2022, 90% of the cases, out of 256 million people who have type 2 diabetes, 90% of those cases are actually type 2 diabetic. So what has changed from 1950 something to 2022, to the 1950s, 1960s to 2022? Our diets.
Wow.
Not our genetics, not our family history. Our diet has changed. We are eating way more processed foods. So that's why I'm saying it's a socioeconomic thing, because type 2 diabetes, it does not matter what is your race. It does not matter what is your age. It does not matter, because children as young as 10 years old have type 2 diabetes, not type 1, type 2 diabetes.
Really?
Yes, there are children as young as 10 years old who are getting type 2 diabetes, not type 1. Why is that? Because of their diets, right? So it's a socioeconomic thing, because number one is about when it comes to education, how the disorder, right? How the disorder is educated, is communicated to the people. Diet, accessibility to food, to healthy foods, right? Culture. Some cultures eat a little more processed foods than others. Cultures that have less processed foods have less non-communicable diseases such as type 2 diabetes, as opposed to cultures that do, right? And anytime the Western pattern diet comes into play to anything, that's where type 2 diabetes is rampant.
Makes sense.
It's a more of a dietary problem than things like genetics and family history and all those things. Because sorry, you're going to ask something.
I was going to ask something, but go ahead and finish your thought.
Just because your mother and your father had type 2 diabetes, it does not state that you are genetically inbound to get it. It's because of certain dietary traits that you follow. But if you break
the patterns of behavior.
Exactly, patterns of behavior. But if you break those dietary traits, I've never heard or seen anybody who was healthy and had type 2 diabetes, who ate healthily, I mean really healthy, and had type 2 diabetes. Never. Gotcha. Think about it.
So the question I was going to ask you then, in relation to what you just said, some people out there may have the understanding or may have the belief that insulin resistance is because the pancreas, which is an organ of our body that creates the insulin that breaks down the food that we eat to make it into energy to go into the cells to then give us the fuel or the energy that we need to function well, that some organs just don't produce enough insulin. So would you say that may be part of the reason that people become diabetic as well, because they don't produce enough insulin? Or is it really stemming from the dietary habits that they have and the food that's now kind of made the pancreas down the line in the family tree less resistant? Would you say that? Because I know some people feel that the pancreas in some people, that's why it's so different for everybody when they're trying to manage diabetes, because some people have a little bit more insulin that they can produce, others have less. In the case of type 1, they don't have any. So they have to be on insulin, for every meal. But for the people that have type 2 diabetes, there's different levels of that insulin that it's produced. And some may need more management than others. So how do you think that plays into your general philosophy?
Okay, so let me explain, right? Now, there are different types of diabetes, as you know, which is, as you rightfully said. So there's type 1 diabetes. Now, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disorder An autoimmune disorder is a disorder that happens when your immune system attacks the healthy cells of the body. In this case, your immune system attacks the healthy cells of the pancreas, the beta cells of the pancreas, that is, right? Now, the pancreas is responsible for producing the hormone insulin. Insulin is a hormone that's responsible for reducing your blood sugar levels. So if you have a damaged pancreas and your beta cells are damaged and you're unable to produce enough insulin or no insulin at all, then your blood sugar levels will be high. Okay, that's why people with type 1 diabetes need to inject insulin into their bodies on a daily basis. Now, there are type 2 diabetics. Now, I'll explain another thing. There's gestational diabetes. That is diabetes that happens
when you're
only
pregnant?
in pregnant women during the second and third trimester. Now, the thing about the phenomenon about gestational diabetes is that it usually happens to women who don't show any signs or symptoms of type 2 diabetes before their pregnancy. But because of a hormone that's released in the second and third trimester that causes this, right? It causes the pregnant woman to experience symptoms of type 2 diabetes, and it usually goes away after childbirth, after the, right? So that's gestational diabetes. Now, this is where things start to get interesting. So type 1 diabetes is when your body's doesn't produce enough insulin. It's an autoimmune disorder that usually happens to children, right? And young adults. It rarely happens to adults, hardly, right? You find a lot of people who got COVID, they became type 1 diabetic after contracting COVID. And that's because the COVID-19 virus actually attacks healthy organs, right? So just remember that. Right, so this is another phenomenon that's happened, but we're not going there at this point in time. So just remember, type 1 diabetes affects children and adolescents or teenagers, whereby their pancreas is damaged, so they don't produce enough insulin. So they need to inject insulin into their bodies on a daily basis. Gestational happens during pregnancy. Pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. Now, pre-diabetes is considered to be borderline diabetes. A lot of people, what they don't understand, don't realize is that you don't suddenly become type 2 diabetic, right? It's a metabolic process. It's a time-dependent phenomenon, kind of like obesity, right? You don't just get it just like that, right? Even though you might have genetics, that might be, because there are some people who are just born with leaner muscle masses than us. That's just life, right? Right, that's just life, right? And just because you cut from the same cloth, it doesn't mean that your fat burning or your metabolism always will be the same. So my brother, he will lose weight faster. My two brothers, actually, they will lose weight faster than me, right? If we go on the same dietary plan, same regimen, same everything, they will say, if we are all at 200 pounds, one of them might lose 10 pounds, next one might lose 8 pounds, I might lose 5 pounds.
Gotcha.
But it doesn't mean that I have the ability to lose the weight. I just don't do it as efficiently as them. So you're absolutely right when you said that, right? So anyway, getting back to the pre-diabetes thing. Pre-diabetes is called borderline diabetes. So it's when your blood sugar levels are considered to be a little higher than normal, but not yet considered to be diagnosed as type 2 diabetes or your A1C levels. Now, the thing about pre-diabetes, it usually precedes or comes before type 2 diabetes. But get this, it's usually asymptomatic. You don't see any sort of signs or symptoms of pre-diabetes. But get this, it takes 5 to 10 years for you to become pre-diabetic to type 2 diabetic. It's a time-dependent phenomenon, right? So type 2 diabetes is a disorder when your body's producing insulin, but is unable to utilize its insulin properly due to insulin resistance. So what is happening is the opposite of type 1 diabetes. Your body's producing insulin, but it's producing too much insulin.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a very, very important distinction there, and a very good understanding. And I'm hoping that the people that are listening get to understand the differences and the nuances of type 2 diabetes versus type 1 diabetes and the differences and nuances in type 2 diabetes by itself. So that's a very, very, thank you for that explanation, because I think that's a very educational thing that we got today. We learned some stuff today. We went to school today.
Right.
So
Right.
thank you for that. But I wanted to kind of move into your personal journey in terms of your weight loss and what you did to get to where you are, where you're healthy. When did you decide, you know what? I'm going to do something about this, and I've got to take care of my health before I can take care of other people's health. How did you handle your journey?
Right. So in 2018, 2019, I realized that I was really struggling with my weight. Yeah, I was really struggling. And for somebody who is a nutritionist and somebody who helps people with reversing their type 2 diabetes, I realized like I was struggling with controlling my waist circumference and controlling my body fat percentage and controlling the pounds. I was working out really hard. I was eating a certain way, eating healthy as I thought it was, as what I learned. And I realized that for me, I was struggling with losing the weight. And in 2020, I decided to have a different approach. I said, you know what? Let me have a different approach to how I'm going to deal with this thing, right? Now, at the end of 2019, I was actually 245 pounds. Now I'm 215 pounds, right?
Okay.
Right, so within the past, and I lost it healthy, but the thing about it is I'm keeping it off. And because what I started doing, I started actually following to a T what I tell the people who are type 2 diabetic. So I started treating myself like I was type 2 diabetic, right? Because, you know, a lot of people, they will preach something and they don't do it. And, it's not to say like, because coming on to the end of 2019, that's when I realized like, okay, look, I told this person that, and they got results with their A1C. Maybe I can do the same thing and get the same results with my weight. Because I realized when their A1Cs went down, their waist circumference went down, their body fat percentage went down. And I said to myself, but if the advice that I'm telling them, maybe I should start taking my own advice. So I started taking my own advice. And the thing about it is I lost the weight, but I kept it off. Because I was at the 2 times I was at my heaviest were during university, right? Because that was a really hard time for me. During university time, I was at my heaviest, and also 2018, 2019. That's when, you know, because you know, life was happening. So work was stressful and those things. But since I started following my own advice, like really taking it to heart, I realized I started seeing better results, not only in my body fat percentage, but also in my skin. You know, I started getting less acne, feeling less sick, you know, all these other things. And you know, I made a few mistakes along the way. You know, I actually in 2019, when I was trying to, you know, do the whole weight loss thing, I was doing the Atkins diet, you know, trying different things. And I actually got a kidney stone from eating too much protein. You know, eating all the protein, because, you know, Atkins diet is a high protein diet. And what that did from those mistakes, you know, it was a painful mistake, of course, you know, because I realized like, you know, and that's why I'm not a fan so much of things like tablets on these things. I'm not saying that it's wrong or it's bad, but tablets and all these things are what you call short-term problems, short-term solutions to a long-term problem. So they kind of like you're bargaining something for nothing, or it's like putting a plaster on a gunshot wound. You know what I mean? So these are short-term problems, and only until when I started making lifestyle changes or behavior modification, that's when things started happening. I started being a little more mindful, and that's how the system came up, right? Because it's all about mindful nutrition. Because those people that I did those things with, they were tips that I knew, but I realized like when they started being a little more mindful, because they started saying things like, you know, I'm a bit more mindful of what I eat now. I'm a little more mindful of, you know, of mixing this with that, you know, and they started actually seeing results, right? Some in 3 months, right? Some actually resolve it fully, some didn't, but that was all up to them because you, as a coach, you have no control over
Exactly.
those things. But what you do, and at the end of the day, they have to want to do it. But at the end of the day, you were part of that process to help them. You know what I mean? You're part of that process to resolve a problem or to improve their life.
Yeah.
So for me, that journey, it wasn't an easy journey, of course, because I had to unlearn a lot of things that I even learned in university or as a nutrition professional, right? I had to learn a lot of things. I had to debunk a lot of things. I had to try a lot of things on myself. So that's why now, when I give my advice, I can confidently give it to people because I am a testimonial of
Yes.
my own methods. Well,
I like your philosophy, and it's very similar to my own in that you have to treat the people not only just with their physical, but you also have to treat them with their emotional as well as their mindset. It takes a, if you help, you can do all the things right, but if you don't have the right mindset, it's not going to be successful. So I think that
exactly.
also plays a part into behavior change. You have to understand there's a problem, first of all, because if you don't understand it's a problem, then as far as you're concerned, there is no problem that you have to solve. So having the mindset, having the understanding and the insight into knowing that, you know what, I've got to do something about my life, got to do something about my health, then having the mindset to make the changes that are necessary for you to be healthy. I think it's all a holistic approach. And I think it's definitely similar to my own in terms of your philosophy is very similar to my own. So I want to move on to your mission now. Your mission is to help the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I wanted to kind of have you talk to us about what is your plan moving forward and how to do that. Because what I've also found, my family is also from the Caribbean, and I find that even in my own immediate family, diabetes is rampant. Not only diabetes, but lupus, we have sickle cell traits and sickle cell anemia, we got sickle cell and all kinds of different things. But one of the main things is definitely diabetes. And so in the Caribbean, it seems to be a thing. It's, and I guess it's because, and when you said dietary earlier, I could relate to that because people of the Caribbean, we love the carbs. We love the dumplings. We love the yams. We love all the stuff that we love the bami. I know you might call it something else in Trinidad, but we love the stuff that is full of carbs and is really not conducive to treating or to helping a diabetic person. So what is your plan? Because my plan is also to help not only my family, but the people in the Caribbean as well, where my family is from. But what is your plan moving forward and how you're going to move this movement forward in terms of treating diabetes and in many cases, and in a lot of cases, reversing it? What's your plan?
So my plan is not only to focus on Trinidad, but to focus on the Caribbean region and internationally.
Awesome.
Right? I believe that's, and sometimes too, and this is, as the Bible said, sometimes a prophet is not appreciated in his own land, Jesus didn't really, I'm not saying I'm Jesus, right? But Jesus didn't really perform any miracles in Galilee. So sometimes for you to get that recognition, maybe you have to put yourself out there, and maybe you have to put yourself in a place or in a position where people can appreciate what you do. And when sometimes your people nearest to you see, or your hometown, when they see what you're doing, that's when they might actually come on. Because you have to understand too, sometimes it's all about a state of readiness. Have you ever realized that when you try talking to like a close family member and stuff like that, they mightn't really take the message that you're trying to convey, and somebody else might say the same thing that you're saying, and all of a sudden it's like a aha moment. So always remember, it's not always about the message, it's about the messenger.
Yes, I agree with that. So it's not always about what's being said, it's about who's actually saying it, right?
Who's actually saying it, right?
You are so right about that. I've found that to be true because I found with my own family members that I'm trying to tell them now that what I'm doing, and a lot of them haven't really taken it on. And yet they have diabetes, right? They haven't taken it on. And I think that was the frustrating thing for me, but realizing that my family members who I'm trying to help haven't taken it on because I guess I'm saying it to them and I'm so close to them that what do I know, right? But
Exactly.
when I tell other people, strangers, they are eating everything up because they realize that it's something that they need to hear. It's something that they know they have, and they know that if they follow the instructions and follow the directives, they can actually handle it. So I'm with you on that. I agree with you 100% on that in terms of your mission and how you are accomplishing it elsewhere. And then hopefully it will come right
Yes.
back and circle back around to home turf, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So how do you actually manage treating different people with the different other issues? Like, for instance, what I found when I talked to some of the people that I coach, some of them have a problem with denial, or they haven't really come to terms yet, but they want the help, but they haven't really come to terms with why they are the way they are. So you get a lot of resistance. You may get denial. You may get people that start on the journey and then they jump off. And then they get back on the journey, and how do you deal with some of these other factors in order to kind of help drive that message home to them?
Okay, so first of all, before taking on any clients, I always ask them a series of questions, right?
Okay.
Now, in the beginning of the journey, I dealt with every and anyone. But now I ask certain questions. So I'd ask things like, do you believe that things can improve? Do you believe in type 2 diabetes reversal? And once I get a certain outcome from them, that's when I determine if I'll be able to help you.
Gotcha.
Because one thing I've learned, and this is no offense to anybody, sometimes you and I may not be that person's cup of tea. And that's fine. And I could live with that. I always tell people I may not be your cup of tea, because they'll be like, well, I want a diet sheet. And I'll tell them, I don't do diet sheets, right? Because at the end of the day, I could tell you, eat 10 broccoli. But what is the reason why you're eating those 10 broccoli stems, you know?
Yeah.
Why are you doing it, right? What I deal with is your problems. And if I see the problems, and from there, I will tell you what you need to do. And if you believe that you can deal with the problems on your own, that's fine. If you want to reach me via email, that's fine. You want to message me, that's fine. Because I always try to make myself accessible to people who need the help.
Gotcha.
Right. Why this email, and I mean, of course, you have to be very particular with your time also when it comes to, because some people might overdo it,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you have to see what is their state of readiness. That's one thing I always do. I'm very particular with who I spend my energy on, because instead of trying to help someone who's in denial, who's whatever, I can take that same energy and put it and invest it into someone who's willing to be coachable.
There you go.
So that is one of the things that I'm doing. So I'm a little more protective with my time. It's not matter, I do want to help people. That's why my free content is out there. So my free content can help you if you're not in that state of readiness. But because for any program to work, whether it's your program or it's my program, the client has to put in the work. And if they're not willing to put in the work, then they'll be wasting their money, but most of all, they'll be wasting your time and your energy. And that energy and that time is necessary for you to invest it in people who is willing to take your advice and implement it and see some sort of results in their life.
So you said something really important. You said something about coachable, and I think that was a really the exact word that needed to be used. People need to be coachable in order to be helped and healed. And if you're not coachable, or you don't think you got a problem, or the problem's not that big, or you can handle it on your own, or you just make a few changes and you'll be okay, then you're going to have an issue. So I like the fact that you target your folks that you help. I like the fact that you talk about coachability, because it is true. They need to be coachable. But I also like the fact that you customize it as well. So let's talk a little bit about your customization. You customize your plans or your programs for individuals based on what their issue is. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. So what I do, I show them the plan, a general term of the plan.
Okay.
And from the general terms, from what they told me, what their problems were, I will tell them, okay, You remember? So this is one of the problems that you have, and this is the solution from
To
all of
that.
this that I'm telling you right here. And from there, and from, from like things like email correspondence and all these things, we tweak it from time to time because it's never a straightforward journey. But 9 out of 10 times, well, 80% of the time, and this is what I learned from a business coach, they said 80% of your clients have the same problems, just at a different degree, just in a different way. So what you have to do, you have to make a system that can help them generally, and then after, for the Q's and A's and all those things, you can implement their personal issues with the question and answers sessions and those things. And that way, and when you have a community or a group of people that can, they push each other. They push each other like, okay, because sometimes one person might be afraid to ask something, another person might be scared, but one person might be brave, and they'll be like, well, how can you answer this and that? And when I answer them, from knowing what to do, it kind of drives the other group members to push forward, to move forward. It helps them to be better.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I agree with the fact that sometimes, when you've got no question is really a silly question, because when one person has that question, you don't even know how many other people may have that same question, but weren't really brave enough to come up and ask the question. So with that, when one person is answered, then you have maybe several people in that group that has now answered. So let me ask you another question. So what does diabetes reversal actually look like? I mean, let's just take one of your success stories, let's say. Can you tell us a little bit about one of your success stories, and what did they come in with in terms of the presenting problem, and what you did to help them, and what sort of changes were they actually seeing? Can you tell us a story of one of your successful patients or clients and what it looked like to actually reverse their diabetes?
Not a problem. So first of all, I'll explain what is diabetes reversal. Type 2 diabetes reversal, that is when you lower your A1C levels to a healthy range, which is below 5.6%, and you keep it down there for the long term without the use of medication or any sort of medical intervention.
Okay.
Right? So that is type 2 diabetes reversal. Now, there's no cure for type 2 diabetes, and I just want to get that very clear. There's no cure. Because it means if you revert back to old habits, then you're going to go back in the same position.
Yeah. So
that's type 2 diabetes. So I will explain, and I love this story right here. This is about a guy. His name was Mr. Grell, right? Mr. Grell. I'll call him, I won't say his first name, but Mr. Grell is his name. Mr. Grell was 79 years old. He came to me in 2019, and he said, James, we met, we spoke, I told him my name is James, whatever. He said, James, I'm 79 years. I've been type 2 diabetic since I was in my 50s or 60s. I don't remember, but I remember he had it for quite some time.
Long time.
He's 79 years and he just wants to get rid of this thing. I said, okay, but you don't just get rid of it, right? I explained to him what this type 2 diabetes reversal and all those things. I said, so why do you really, something had to prompt you to be here? He said, well, the last time I tested my A1C was 8 point something. And when he tested it in the actual clinic, it was 8.3, 8.4. I forgot, but I know it was in the 8 range. And I remember him saying that his doctor wanted to put him on insulin. And he said, I don't want to stick myself for the rest of the day, so for the rest of my life. Now, just letting you know this, right? He said, they want to turn me into a type 1 diabetic. I was like, no. If you're a type 2 diabetic and you're put on insulin, you're an insulin-dependent type 2 diabetic. I explained to him that, but insulin is a short-term solution for a long-term problem. And reason being is because your body is actually producing too much insulin due to insulin resistance. So that's like giving alcohol to an alcoholic, right? It might numb the pain now, but eventually it's going to fester into something bigger. So I said, so I'm not saying by him refusing insulin was the right thing to do, but he dodged a bullet. So I asked him, I said, do you believe that type 2 diabetes is something that could be reversed? He said, at this point in time, I telling the doctor that I could beat this thing, and the doctor telling me no. I have to live with this thing for the rest of my life.
Wow.
So I said, if you're willing to work with me, then I'm willing to work with you. One session, we spoke for almost 2.5 hours. I remember it was a long session, right? The thing about Mr. Grill is that he was 79 years old, right? He was so much on, like, a lot of years suffering with this disorder, with type 2 diabetes. And he also had a son who was autistic, who was on the spectrum. So he had a lot of things going against him. But because Mr. Grill, sorry about that, had a great attitude, results started happening. So after 3 months, it didn't go down by points, it went down by percentages. So he went from 8.3 or 4 to 6.7.
Wow.
It's like, wow. Now he said, James, you know, I'm kind of cheating right now, whatever. I say, what do you mean? He said, I'm drinking rum. I said, okay, what are you drinking? He said, but at this moment in time, I'm not willing to give up that. I said, okay, if you continue doing what we are doing at this point in time, what you can do is not give up the rum, but you can use it as a, you know, as a little form of reward for yourself. Now, for him, that was me just working with him. Now, I'm not saying for you to drink rum for you to get down your A1C levels, but that was his way of kind of wanting to know that, okay, you trying to work with me, I trying to work with you. He's not like an alcoholic or anything like that, right? But he just like a little nightcap. I said, number one, you can't do it every night because, of course, it will affect your blood sugar levels. Number two, the alcohol right now at this point in time is not good for your liver because it's contributing towards the fatty liver disease. So what you need to do is keep it as a social thing. So if you go out, you can have 1 or 2, or maybe once in a while, or once every 2 weeks, you can have your little nightcap. But it's something that should be broken down. He said, okay, he could work with that. I was willing to work with him. He's willing to work with me.
Okay.
But he gave some good news. He said, but James, the doctor told me that I do not need insulin, but he put me on metformin. He put me back on metformin. I said, okay, well, that's an improvement. But what do you want to do? He said, I want to come off this medication. I said, let's keep at it. 6 months in, it went on to 6.7 or whatever to 6.2. He said, well, that's a marked improvement. He said his doctor actually decreased the amount of metformin and the concentration of metformin. I said, here's what to do. Just keep on doing what you're doing, but just make vegetables the star of your plate. Just keep on doing that. After 9 months, Mr. Grell went from 8 point something to 5.2, I believe. Either 5.2 or 5.3.
Wow.
And he came up to me, he showed me the results, and he gave me a fist pump, or bongs, as we like to say in Trinidad.
Yeah.
He said, James, you did it. I said, Mr. Grell, I didn't do it. You did it. But that's because Mr. Grell, he was willing to be coachable, but he believed deep down in his heart that he could overcome this. And despite his age, despite his circumstances, and despite what the doctor told him, he still overcame his problem. So that was a whole lot of factors. So after doing that, I realized that, and after thinking about him, I realized that you have to get patients who are willing to be coachable, right? You need patients like Mr. Grill to help you. Not to say that he didn't have problems, not to say that he didn't have, he didn't have little minor foxes, as they say, little things. He liked rum, but he was willing and able and comfortable to actually say that to me. So that's not good. So it's about building good relationships, but it's also up to the patient.
Yeah. What I like about what you said is, and I find the same thing to be true, is that I have people in the beginning right off the bat say, oh, I can't have this. They're pre-diabetic and they can't have this. They can't have that. They've got to stop eating this. They've got to stop eating that. And I say, well, here's the thing. Once we establish what your baselines are, once we establish what your trigger foods are, there's a possibility with moderation that we can incorporate some of the things that you like back into your diet. However,
Well done.
And so that's how I approach it. So it's very similar to your approach. And what I find is that they don't feel like they're being denied. They don't feel like they have to give up everything, and they can actually have their treat once in a while, in moderation,
In
if
moderation.
they can do everything else correctly. And so that works for many of the people that I talk to. And so I really like that approach, because I think it's when you have to, it's like a child, when you tell a child they shouldn't do this or they shouldn't do that, what are they going
They'll
to
do
do?
it.
They're going to
They'll
do
do it.
it
They'll do it.
because you're telling them not to do it. But if
They'll
you
do
tell
it.
them, okay, you can play when you've done your homework, they get their homework done, then they go play,
Right.
right? Because they know that they can have that thing that they want is coming. They just have to do this first, and they can work with that. So I think that's a really great approach, in that we don't have to eliminate everything. You can actually incorporate some of those things back into your life if you do all the things that you need to do to get your sugars under control and know what your trigger foods are. Once you know what those foods are, then you can, then we can move from there. So let me ask you, what message would you give to the people that are listening out there that are trying to manage their diabetes, or they've maybe just been newly diagnosed and have no idea what to do? Because what I'm finding also is that when you go to the doctor and they tell you you're pre-diabetic, they just give you some pills or tell you that if you don't get your sugars down, that you're going to be on insulin, or that you're going to have to go on some kind of oral medication, and don't give you much else, right? So for those people that are listening that are in that boat, or for those people that have had diabetes for a while and just need some help in how to manage it better, what message would you give them?
First of all,
What's the first thing they should do?
First of all, the message I want to tell them is that type 2 diabetes is not a death sentence. That's the first thing I want to tell people. Like, it's not a death sentence. It's not the end of the world. Yeah. It's something that is totally treatable.
Yeah.
If you need help, get help, and get the right help also.
The right help.
Get the right help, because there are a lot of people out there who will give you quick fixes and all these other things. Don't look for the short-term solution. Don't look for quick fixes. Look for things that will help you with your lifestyle and will help you to change your lifestyle to improve it.
Yeah.
Right? That's another thing. And also have the right mindset to be coachable. Be coachable. Be willing to be teachable. Be willing to take advice. Because there are a lot of people, because just because you know of something does not mean you know something.
Yeah.
Always remember that.
That's true. Wow.
Just because I post one or two things on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, does not make me a marketing expert. It does not.
Exactly. Okay,
so
gotcha.
And I know a lot of people, I always say in Trinidad, we like to say, I know, right? I know. And I know you know of it. You don't know it, because results shows. That's the only way. If you know something, right? So how you had your type 2 diabetes journey and you overcame it, results show. So if you're so you have to be coachable, right? You need to get help, but most of all, it's not a death sentence. Wow. Yeah. Most of all, it's not a death sentence. There is life after type 2 diabetes, and you can live a normal healthy life. Normal, healthy, not normal alone, because a lot of people normal could be unhealthy, but a normal, healthy life after being diagnosed with pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. You just have to make up your mind to make the change and to be the change in your life.
I love it. I love that. I love that. So, James, I want to thank you for coming by today. But before we even do that, I want to know how people can reach you if they need to utilize your services. If you could just tell them. I'm also going to include all your information in the show notes and in the comments. But I just wanted you to be able to let people know how they can reach you if they need help, if they need some services. How can they get a hold of you?
Okay. So first of all, you can go on my website, which is www.inspiro Wellness, which is INSPIRO Wellness, WELLNESS.info. I'll say it again, www.inspirowellness.info. Or you can go on my LinkedIn profile, just type in James Harper, and you see my picture. You see a nice picture of me smiling and stuff like that, right? You can go on my LinkedIn picture, my LinkedIn profile also, and you can check out Inspiro Wellness, Instagram, Facebook. And I also have an audio blog, which is the Inspiro's Diabetes Debunked audio blog. It's on YouTube. And what you can do when you go on the website, you can also book a free consultation, free 30-minute consultation with me, just to see if we are the right fit. And we go from there, we can go from there. So you can reach me on my website, www.inspirowellness.info, or you can check out my profile on LinkedIn, James Harper. Check out my social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, at Inspiro Wellness. And all those platforms, you can actually book a free consultation with me, and you can go from there.
I love it. I want to just kind of concur with you and co-sign on your audio blog. I actually listened to a few of your audio blogs, and they were so informational and so helpful in terms of people not knowing the basics of what they have in their disease.
Right.
And I think when I listened to a few of those, I was like, wow, this is so helpful. And nuggets of information that you can actually implement right away. Things that are informational that you didn't know about that you now know about and know how to handle. And I think that people are going to be really, really encouraged to kind of go check that out. I'm going to encourage you all to go check that out, because they're very, very informational, additional tips that you can learn how to manage your diabetes better. So what's next on the agenda for you in terms of your business?
Well, what I'm doing now, I've released my book, the A1C Breakdown ebook, and in due time, what I would like to do, because a lot of people, I would like to collaborate with someone, hopefully, to talk about recipe formations, right? Right? Yes. Okay. So, because a lot of people, they always ask for, okay, so you gave me the blueprint. What are some recipes that I need? So maybe that could be a nice extension. Collaborate with someone to do that. Also, to start doing a little more collaborations with podcasters and also with other coaches to start to push you, because we can't do it alone, right? Yeah. There's, as I said, hundreds of millions of diabetics, type 2 diabetics out there that need help. Yeah. And we as coaches need to collaborate to help bring across that message. Before you end this, I just want to say I'd like to thank you so much. This has been such an enlightening experience to invite me on your coaching journey, because this is a true blessing for us to relay a message to help other people all around the world to deal with something that's totally treatable. So I'd like to thank you so much, Jenisys, for having me here. It's a pleasure, and it has been an honor to be a part of your journey.
Thank you so much. And it's been a real pleasure having you on, James. I believe in divine intervention, because how we even met was divine intervention, I believe, because I just happened to see you on the social media, on this platform, that a group that I just recently joined, right? So I believe that when our paths cross, that there's some divine intervention that's included in that crossing of paths. And I know that we're going to forge a really great friendship, because of the fact that our message is so much needed, and it's a movement. And so with the collaboration of everyone taking this message to the world, we can get this done. We can get the word out there. We can help a lot of people, and people will be really impacted by the message that we have to give them. So I want to thank you for taking your time to be on the show today. We enjoyed you. We got a lot of information. We learned some distinctions of diabetes type 2, and also the distinction between type 2 and type 1, and some other things that you taught us today about this disease. So we are thankful that you were here, and we want to probably have you on again to give us some more information to help us grow our knowledge and our treatment of this disease in the future. So thank you again, James, for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We will see you again next time. Thank you again for joining us today. I'm Jenisys Walters from Jenisys Solutions Diabetes, the sugar-sweet enemy. Join us again for another story of change, where we discuss and we talk about ways you get to take your life back. Have a great week, but don't forget to drop us a comment about today's story. Here's to your health. See you all next time. Have a good one.